What's going on, guys? Yash Talaliker here with another video on the Winning Browns podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the head coaching hires um, for the 2025 NFL head coaching carousel. Obviously, this video is coming out really late, much later than I would have wanted. Unfortunately, the New Orleans Saints decided to hire Kellen Moore after the Super Bowl, and then it took another 2 weeks or so for him to hire coaching staff, making it really difficult for me to be able to record this video until after Mardi Gras. Things had been busy for me personally around that time too, involving grades and other stuff for college. But we'll make hay while the sun shines. Better late than never. And we'll rank and grade the 7 head coaches in this class. Pretty interesting class, if you ask me. But we're going to start off with number 7, going to be Brian Schottenheimer. Yeah, this move to me was just extremely baffling. If I'm being honest, I don't understand why the Cowboys didn't just keep Mike McCarthy based on who they decided to hire. Brian Schottenheimer has just been moving around the entire NFL as far as taking offensive play caller duties across the league. There's a reason why he's been in the league for 25 years and never gotten a head coaching offer. He's been fired several times. I'm not saying that disqualifies him as a head coaching candidate, but what I am saying is that I think that there were better names within the Cowboys' own pool of interviewees that they could have hired. I think as far as his coaching staff goes, he has a decent coaching staff. I like Clayton Adams as the offensive coordinator. I like what's it called? I like the running backs coach Derek Foster. I like the offensive line coach Connor Riley. I think that he's hired a couple of pretty decent people as far as on the coaching staff. The guy I'm not as big of a fan of is the hire at the defensive coordinator role, that being, of course, Matt Eberflus. I'm not exactly sure if he's a good fit for this Cowboys defense, being that he's more of a 4-3 type defensive coordinator for a team that has a lot of more 3-4 flexibility. I don't know how exactly players like Odigizua or even a guy like Mason Smith exactly match into that role, let alone a guy like Micah Parsons. Although Micah Parsons can definitely play 4-3 better, I think he's more suited for that 3-4 role. And Matt Eberflus in general has shown not to be exactly a great coordinator or a great coach at that. At the end of the day, I think this Cowboys team is just dependent really on the personnel that they have. It seems like they're just keeping the same identity that they've had for the last 25 years, which is not bad. I mean, they've been to the playoffs several times, but they need a change in identity, and it seems like they're just doing the same thing over and over again. And it just goes to show you why the Cowboys haven't made an NFC championship since 1995. It's because of these reasons. And quite frankly, I think it's kind of pathetic how Jerry Jones manages his head coaching hires. Nonetheless, I'm rooting for Brian Schottenheimer. Hopefully, he turns out to kind of make me eat my own words. But I don't want them to be too good. I'm still a Niners fan. I don't like the Cowboys, but at the end of the day, I don't think this is a good move whatsoever. At number 6, we're going to go with Pete Carroll. Now, this is in no way an indictment on Pete Carroll's ability as a head coach. I think Pete Carroll has shown he's going to be a Hall of Fame head coach. This is more of the fact I'm not as big of a fan as some people are of his coaching staff. Now, Chip Kelly, he's had his highs as an offensive coordinator in the NFL. I think that he did a good job as far as developing Nick Foles into the quarterback that he became, in far as developing a guy like Mark Sanchez to have a better year that he did, other than his tenure with the New York Jets. But at the same time, obviously, Chip Kelly still had his limitations. There's a reason why he was horrible in his final year with the Eagles and then with the Niners. And I'm not a big fan of Patrick Graham as a defensive coordinator, to be honest with you. Both him and Pete Carroll, I think, have had their best days as defensive play callers behind them. So, I mean, that depends on, I don't know who's exactly calling the plays defensively for them. However, I do think that there are some people on that coaching staff who definitely have some qualifications, or not qualifications, but I think can be good at their role. I think that Chip Beatty was pretty good as a wide receiver coach for the Chargers and the Chicago Bears. I think that the Raiders need an improvement on the receiving core, and I think Chris Beatty definitely could give them that, depending on who they decide to draft or maybe trade for. As far as the rest of their coaching staff goes, um, overall, I think it's just a bunch of highs and lows. Their quarterbacks coach is going to be, of course, what's his name? Why am I forgetting? Their quarterbacks coach is going to be none other than Greg Olson, and that's probably one of the moves I'm less excited about. Greg Olson you know, has helped coach several Raiders quarterbacks in the past, namely Derek Carr for a long time. And I think that while he definitely helped Derek Carr have some of his better statistical years, his play calling overall is inconsistent. Obviously, he's not play calling here, but I do think that unless, you know, the Raiders find their specific quarterback that they need, a guy who fits in that system and plays elite football. I just don't know that Greg Olson would be the right guy for that quarterback coach position. Now, granted, this video is most likely probably coming out after the Geno Smith trade, so obviously that changed a lot of stuff. But before this was still my grade, and I still do have my concerns as far as Greg Olson as a QB coach, as far as this whole staff. Again, Pete Carroll is probably the main reason why this is a much higher grade than anything, being the fact that it's a C. But obviously, this is also a short-term head coaching position, being that Pete Carroll is now in his mid-70s. So someone in that coaching staff is probably going to be a successor at some point to him. If not, they hire someone else. But at the very least, the Raiders are going to be a lot better than they have over previous years, and this is a much better hire than what they could have hired or have had hired in previous years. It's just I'm not a big fan of the coaching staff, but yeah, I mean Pete Carroll is still a Hall of Fame coach and a good coach, and I think that he'll definitely improve this Raiders team. At number 5, we're going to go with Mike Vrabel. He's the head coach of now the New England Patriots. This again, similar reasons. This is no way an indictment on Mike Vrabel's ability as a coach. I mean, in my opinion, he was one of the best coaches in the league before he got fired by the Tennessee Titans. I just don't think this is a good fit whatsoever. I'm not a big fan of a lot of the hires on his coaching staff. Todd Downing is not a good wide receivers coach, in my opinion. Doug Marrone never really had great offensive lines while he was coaching the Jacksonville Jaguars, either as an offensive coordinator, offensive line coach, or as a head coach. I don't think that Josh McDaniels is going to really help Drake May in any sort of way. Drake May is a play action based quarterback with the deep ball. Josh McDaniels is more a guy who's suited for pocket passers, and that is just not a good fit whatsoever. I do think that Terrell Williams, the Patriots defensive coordinator, I think that he's probably one of the better hires on this team. He was the defensive line coach for the Titans under Mike Vrabel's leadership. He became the assistant head coach in 23. He's had a lot of experience, and then he was the defensive line coach for the Lions, who had a really good defensive line last year, as well as the run game coordinator. So I certainly think that he is one of the better hires for Mike Vrabel, and I think their defense can definitely do a lot of damage. But obviously, this is a team that still needs to go and spend a lot of money in order for that to be the case. Yes, I do certainly like that Terrell Williams hire. As far as otherwise, Ashton Grant is the quarterbacks coach for the Patriots. He was the quarterbacks coach for the Cleveland Browns over the past 2 years, and while he's had his ups with obviously helping Joe Flacco to have a career renaissance in 23, he's also not exactly been good as far as helping Deshaun Watson maybe get back to his former MVP like self. And Jameis, under his leadership, Jameis Winston was a guy who had a lot of turnovers as usual. So, Ashton Grant, I think he can definitely help Drake May as far as, Drake May is very similar to a Joe Flacco, but you might see a Drake May who's very turnover prone, a guy who might end up, having big interception numbers, 15, 16. And I just don't know if that's going to be good with Josh McDaniels being the offense play caller if you're limited to playing within the pocket. So I think this is a very interesting coaching hire. I think it was a bit reckless by Robert Kraft to just go and kind of find a guy who fit that boys club routine that the Patriots seem to have. But at the same time, Vrabel is more than qualified. So I think at the very least, this Patriots team will definitely go from 3-14 to a team that maybe is contending for a winning season, and definitely will be a playoff team as long as they spend money in the next few years. It's just I think that they're probably limiting themselves as far as helping the development of their franchise quarterback and some of their younger players. But nonetheless, Mike Vrabel is going to have a C grade for that reason. I still think he's a good coach, but I just don't know if he was the best coach for the Patriots. At number 4, we're going to go with Aaron Glenn for the New York Jets. I consider having this a C plus, but there's nothing I can really do to kind of criticize Aaron Glenn as a coach. So there's a good chance that he could make it work, but there's also a very good chance that he can't. It seems like the Jets are just hiring the same type of coach, very qualified head coaches, whether that's Robert Saleh, Todd Bowles, or Aaron Glenn, all defensive-minded head coaches. But it just seems like they're all destined for the same fate. I feel like there's very little to work with for Aaron Glenn. They don't have a great quarterback situation. And, this is a defense, obviously Aaron Glenn is very qualified to run that defense, but this is a defense that just, I don't know, I question the fit with Aaron Glenn. I think he can make it work. Guys like Quinnen Williams, guys like, Quincy Williams, Sauce Gardner, they're very versatile players, but they have their limitations. I think that, you're talking about guys like Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald. I'm more curious as to how they will end up fitting in Aaron Glenn's scheme. But sorry, give me one sec. But as far as Aaron Glenn goes, one way or another, his coaching staff is really, really good. And this is, I think, the main reason why I had him end up in the B tier. Aaron Glenn hired, what's his name? Scott Turner as the pass game coordinator, who I'm a big fan of. Sean Jefferson is the wide receivers coach. Tanner Eggstrand is the offensive coordinator. Tanner Eggstrand, I really, really, really like. He was obviously the pass game coordinator, if I'm not mistaken, for the Detroit Lions from 2023 and 2024, helping Jared Goff to continue his improvement and continue to have career years. And for that reason, I think that this New York Jets team, if they find the right quarterback, they can really take the next step in being, an offensive powerhouse. So I have no question there. It's just a matter of now, can they find the right quarterback? And that might be a problem because this is a Jets team whose, ownership does really not give them a lot of leeway. He's very hands-on. Obviously, we're talking about Woody Johnson being a guy who's very short fuse. And if things go wrong one way or another, he's very quick to push that button to fire Aaron Glenn. And for that reason, that's the main reason why I feel kind of uncertain about this move. As far as Glenn's qualifications, there's nothing to write home about, nothing or to write against him. There's nothing I really have a problem with his coaching staff. It's just more of, is this going to work? And unfortunately, because Woody Johnson's the owner, I just don't see it work to the extent I think Aaron Glenn would be able to make it work for other teams. For that reason, I give it a B minus. But at number three, we're gonna go with Liam Cohen. I'm gonna give this a B. I think Liam Cohen is gonna be helped a little bit more by his coaching staff. I think he hired a better coaching staff than Aaron Glenn, which is really hard to say because Aaron Glenn really kind of nailed it out of the ballpark. But Liam Cohen, I think the main question I had about him was, of course, his relative lack of coaching experience compared to the rest of this bunch. His only true role as an offensive play caller was this past year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was the offensive coordinator for the Rams back in 2022. That year just did not turn out well. But he obviously Matthew Stafford got hurt halfway through the year, and they did not have a great backup role. When he called plays, however, for Baker Mayfield, even with the Rams, they were great. At the end of the year, Baker Mayfield ended up turning that into a great year with the Buccaneers in 23, and then a contract extension, and Liam Cohen helped him continue to become what looks to be a franchise quarterback with the Bucs. But being that he's only had one true year where he's a full-on offensive play caller in 22, obviously Sean McVay was calling the offensive plays for the Rams. I question how good of his, I question whether his lack of experience will lead to a relative inability to be a leader within that locker room. Usually you want a guy who's had multiple years where he's commanding some sort of duty as a coordinator. Dave Canales was the one question I had last year was he's only had 1 year as an offense coordinator, but he was a pass game coordinator previous years. Liam Cohen doesn't exactly have that at the NFL level. He has that as a collegiate level. And for that reason, I wonder how that will exactly turn out as far as his leadership role. But he's well-spoken. His players seem to love him. He seems like a very intelligent, very intricate, very detailed, attention to detail type head coach. And he hired a really good coaching staff. I like Grant Udunski as the offensive coordinator. I like Anthony Campanile as the defensive coordinator a lot. I think he did really well with Isaiah McDuffie and Edgerrin Cooper as a linebackers coach with the Packers. And for that reason, I'm going to give this a B. The one question I have with Liam Cohen is how much of the front office turmoil leads to him not being as good of a head coach, and does his leadership surpass that? But other than that, if his coaching staff is as good as it is and his leadership excels what I think it will be, then he can turn out to be one of the best coaches in the league without a doubt. But Liam Cohen otherwise will be number 3 on this list. At number 2, I'm going to go with Kellen Moore. I really like this head coaching hire a lot more than other people did. Kellen Moore has had a very interesting path to becoming a head coach. He was the quarterback's coach at, I think it was just 29 for the Dallas Cowboys back in 2018. In 2019, his first year with the Cowboys, they had the 6th ranked offense as far as scoring, 2nd overall in the first year. 2020, they were on pace to break a lot of different offense records. Dak Prescott was on pace to break Peyton Manning's record for most passing yards in a season. Then he got hurt. For what it's worth, I think he still did a pretty good job with Andy Dalton. And then, of course, he had to play Ben DiNucci a lot of games, and Ben DiNucci was not good. But then we saw him in the next few years. In 2021, they had the 4th ranked offense, and then in 2022, they had the 8th ranked overall offense. I think the 1 year where he wasn't as good was with the Chargers, but I think most of that was due to the fact the last few games where they did not have Justin Herbert, they were terrible. So if anything, it just shows me that one of the things, Kellen Moore is not going to be maybe one of the elite offensive play callers in the game. That's fine, right? He can't win without an elite quarterback. That's fine, or a good quarterback, but that's fine. There are a lot of great offensive play callers in the league who can't win without some sort of good quarterback. There are very few, offensive head coaches who are the Sean McVays, the Kyle Shanahans, the Kevin O'Connells, the Andy Reeds, the Sean Paytons of the world, right? Most of them are, guys who can transcend a team, but they might not be able to do well unless they have the adequate amount of talent. But that's where his coaching staff comes in, and I think Kellen Moore hired a really, really good head coaching staff, or a really, really good coaching staff alongside him. Um, we're talking about offensively. He hired Doug Neusmeyer as the offensive coordinator, who was the quarterbacks coach this past year for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts, had career years. He had, I think, if I'm not mistaken, a 68 QBR this past year under Neusmeyer. Neusmeyer is a veteran. His son is the quarterback for LSU currently as it stands. And I think that he could do similar things with Derek Carr, who's a very similar quarterback as far as just passing style goes to Jalen Hurts. Obviously, he's not nearly as good in the run game. But I will be interested in seeing how that run game transpires for the New Orleans Saints. But I think they hired a good, running backs coach, that being Joel Thomas, who developed Alvin Kamara into the Saints' all-time leading rusher. And he did some really good things this past year. So I think Joel Thomas definitely solidifies that run game for the New Orleans Saints. Brandon Staley, I have my questions on him, but I think as a defensive coordinator, he's definitely shown to be really good. I think Terry Joseph as the defensive pass game coordinator, I think he can definitely develop that secondary, which has been young, raw, but really good. TJ Pagnetti as the run game coordinator. Again, he's done really well with the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, another coach being hired from that Eagles staff, who I think is great. So I think Kellen Moore really nailed it out of the park with his with his coaching staff hires, especially on that offensive side of the ball. I think his defensive coordinator, Brandon Staley, while I have my question marks about him, I think that he's shown in the past that he's more than a qualified defense coordinator. I think the Saints team is trying to rebuild and retool that defense. So I think Staley is perfect in the case that they switch to a 3-4 defense. And for that reason, I have Kellen Moore at an A-. But at number one, it's easily Ben Johnson. He hired probably the best coaching staff of any person other than maybe Liam Cohen this coaching cycle. Dennis Allen as his defensive coordinator. Just absolute fantastic hire. Ben Johnson, obviously, we know what he is as an offensive coordinator with the Lions. Had one of the most creative, most aggressive play calling units in the entire league. We're talking about kind of reviving Jared Goff's entire career. We're talking about them being, top 3 in the league in passing stats and run stats every year. Ben Johnson knows what he's doing, and his coaching staff definitely kind of proves that. Declan Doyle, I'm a huge fan of him as far as an offensive coordinator hire. I think if you look at the rest of the offensive coaching staff, you're talking about guys like Eric Bieniemy as the running backs coach. He's done well with guys like Isaiah Pacheco in the past. JT Barrett, I'm very interested in how he does with Caleb Williams, developing him. And then you look at the defensive assistants, Cannon Matthews, Richard Smith, Press Taylor. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's an A-grade coaching staff and an A-grade coaching hire. And I have nothing bad to say about this whatsoever. And I think Ben Johnson alongside Caleb Williams, I think the Bears are looking to a new and elite level era for this franchise overall. And for that reason, Ben Johnson comes in at number one with an A+ grade.